something else.
So let me ask you about that. So you just made the case, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, or we seem to agree on the case that because of this absence of a higher value, whatever it happens to be, that's fallen down into the political domain, and then the quasi-religious impulses that are infiltrating the political domain tend to pit one side against another. So you get a good versus evil narrative emerge, but the problem with the good versus evil narrative is that the evil is embodied in some other group and the good is embodied in your group. So one of the things I've been thinking through is that, in sophisticated literature, you don't have good guys and bad guys. You have good guys and bad guys in the same soul. And
that's the Solzhenitsyn quote. Yes.
Right. Exactly. And you see that in sophisticated literature. Everyone knows that. So here's a thought. So if you don't have a abstract religious system that insists that the dividing line between good and evil is to be fought inside your own soul, so to speak, then it degenerates one step into a battle between good and evil in the outside world, with evil being conveniently located somewhere else. So, one of the things I think that Christianity did bring the world, and it had its roots in Jewish thinking as well, was that the greatest of evils was to be found within, not without. And maybe that's one way of protecting society from this schismatic tendency that we see reemerging. Let me give you an example, okay? Yeah. I'll just go through this very quickly. So in the book of Genesis, in the story of Adam and Eve, you have evil located as a snake, right? So it's a predator. It's the predator in the garden. And predatory snakes were hell on primates. So there's plenty of evolutionary reason for that. But then you can imagine, so there's an insistence in Judeo-Christian thinking that the snake in the garden is Satan, which is a very odd idea. I tried to think that through. I thought, okay, snake as predator, other person as predator, group as predator, soul, inside your soul as predator. It's increasing psychologization of the idea of predator because, when we were animals, like other animals, we were preyed upon by straightforward predators and then by other people and then by other individuals. But then we figured out that battle was within. And if it isn't occurring within, then is it necessary that it is transferred to something that's occurring without?
I really like your point about how believing in original sin or that the battle is within makes you less susceptible to a simplistic "we're good, they're evil" narrative. I like that a lot. I'm a big fan of Amanda Ripley, who wrote this amazing essay called Complicating the Narrative. And it's about how journalists, reporters, don't report like, well, this side says this and this side says that. Don't just report the two sides. That simplifies the narrative in a sense. Rather, show splits within each side and show that the story is really complicated. And that kind of stops people in their rush to judgment and mob action and makes them think, which of course is what great literature does too. And that also helps explain what I think is particularly attractive to me in Christianity, or at least in some of the Christians that I know, is that they really make a virtue of humility. In a way that, Jews don't, at least American Jews don't seem to. But the idea that we are all flawed, don't be so sure of yourself, judge not lest ye be judged. I sometimes join a group of evangelical preachers, actually brought together by Jonathan Rauch, another Jewish atheist, but with a bunch of interesting people like Pete Weiner, David Brooks, and some actual ministers as well. But I just love the virtues there of humility, grace, forgiveness, and these are virtues that have just been completely drained away from modern society.
I think you see the struggle for morality within in the Jewish tradition and the prophetic tradition, with the insistence that people have deviated away from the path of God and have to be called back to it. So at least the precursors to that idea are there in broad form, and importantly,
right, that makes sense. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea that there's a struggle between our better angels and our inner demons, between good and evil within us, is an important idea. It doesn't have to come from the parable of the snake in the Garden of Eden. The problem there is that if it is, it's just a parable, and people who weren't raised in the Christian tradition or who just don't believe it or can't sign on to it can reject it. But it's not that abstruse a notion. appears also in Freud's contrast between the id and the superego. It appears in evolutionary psychology in terms of the particular drives and motives that served us well in an anarchic society. You see it in cartoons with the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. I think if we think it's a good idea, we have to articulate why it's a good idea and express it in a way that anyone can accept it, regardless of the tradition they happen to have been brought up in. And in terms of the Jewish notion of humility, I'm sorry, but I have to tell a Jewish joke, which is that on the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, the rabbi and the cantor are standing in front of the open ark with the Torah scrolls. The cantor falls to his knees and says, "Lord, I am nothing." The rabbi, seeing him falls to his knees, says, "Lord, I am nothing." In the back of the row of the synagogue, there's the lowly janitor, overcome with emotion. He falls to his knees and says, "Lord, I am nothing." And the rabbi says to the cantor, "Look who thinks he's nothing." So then, that's humility within the Jewish tradition.
Right.